Okay. Can you tell?
I can really see the screen without getting into
Whatever.
that one.
They're both the same screen. You can see the same thing. But anyways, hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Uplift Past Crossroads again. Uplift Past Crossroads. I'm Sean Christopher Jenkins. I got a treat for you guys today. So just in case you didn't know, uh, I'm in seminary school. I love seminary school. Seminary school is a dream come true, and so I'm about to share with you guys my presentation that I just did for one of my classes. One of the classes I'm in this semester is the Gospel of John, the Gospel of John, and then the other class I'm in is titled Ancient and Medieval Church History, right? And so with seminary school, it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work, right? And when I say that, I mean like, see, if you were younger, like I would say under 25, you don't have kids, you're not married, you don't really work, and you're a college student, you know how college students are, right? All you do is work, schoolwork mostly. Some people work, but not everybody. So like seminary school will be a cakewalk for you, right? But when you have kids, you're married, you work, like seminary school is very demanding and very taxing on on you, right? In your family, whoever's around you, because you all your time will be delegated towards your studies, right? So but it's well worth it. Like I said, it's a dream come true being in seminary school. I've been waiting my whole life just to learn the the things that I want to have in my arsenal as a pastor and as a leader in ministry, and just growing churches and having a thriving ministry. Like going to seminary school can help with that. So my master's that I'm getting is a master's of divinity, and I go to a school called Colgate Rochester Kosher Divinity School. So, all right. I want to share that with you guys before I tackle the video. So, you can go ahead and get your Bibles out to John chapter 9. That's what we're going to be talking about today. John chapter 9. And we're going to be talking about, just in case you guys probably heard sermons on it before. It's titled The Man Born Blind, right? The beggar that Jesus healed. And you probably heard sermons about preachers talking about his parents not having his back and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be taking a deep study talking about the parents of the man born blind, and were they truly Christ followers? Were they not Christ followers? Like, it's a huge debate. No matter how you look at the text and you really dig down deep in the text, it's not really an answer. I mean, but some people say that there is an answer in it. But yeah, we're going to look at that. But before we do that, I want to show you guys a picture real quick of my son, right? So just in case you didn't know, my son, he's about to be born. So his due date is November 26th. So this is my first kid. So November 26th is his due date, right? So let me share my screen so you guys can see what he looks like, right? So this is my son right here. So when we went on September 10th, 2024 to do the ultrasound thing with Jigger. All right. Every single time we've been going to the ultrasound, Zion has always given the doctors, or whatever you want to call them, a hard time. Yeah, the ultrasound tech. He's always given them a hard time. Like he's never had his he never had his spine looked at because he was always in the wrong position or breached. Then also, he's anytime they try to get his face, as you can see on the photo, he always like hides his face. Right? You could tell like whenever he's in a womb, he's very comfortable. Like whatever position he's in, just depending on whatever everybody else is trying to, whatever position everybody else trying to get him in. So he's not gonna ever bend anybody's will. So I can tell he's gonna be a very he's gonna be a baby that you can't really control, and an individual you can't control, which that's me, just in case you don't know. So he's gonna be just like his dad, right? So I want to show you guys my son, Zion Emmanuel Jenkins. I'm excited before he comes into the world. It's kind of remind me of the Bible verse, that Bible verse that says, "I knew you when you were in your mother's womb." Like that's God talking about how He knew us before we even came into being. Like that's what I feel like about Zion. Like, like like I know who he is, what he's like, because I saw him when he was in his mother's womb. So that's how I feel about my son. right? So yeah. So y'all be praying for us about like the baby stuff and hospital bills and all that stuff. And just in case you guys want to donate, somebody told me a long time ago to always tell people, in the description of the video, you can donate to our PayPal and our Venmo, Cash App. It's in the description of the video. Um, but yeah, let's go ahead and get to it, guys. So I did all my social media marketing while I was talking. So today's study will be on the passage we're going to be focusing in on is John chapter 9, verse 18 to 34. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read it. Let's go ahead and read John chapter 9, verse 18 to 34, right? And then if I need to read the rest of the chapter, I will. I'm pretty sure I will need to. So let's see where we go at from here. All right, so John chapter 9, 18 through 24, right? Let's see what happens here. All right. So again, this is when Jesus heals a man who's born blind. It doesn't say what the name of the man is, and so he remains nameless. And it doesn't. What else doesn't it do? It don't matter. So yeah, so he gets healed. The Pharisees, they are questioning like who did this miracle, and they're really mad about this miracle being done because it happened on a Sabbath, right? Then also, you got two different groups of people. So I'll do another video on John chapter 9, right? So you know how with this story, right? The man born blind, you guys heard it before. Like Jesus, he spits on the ground, makes mud, and he puts it on the person's eyes, and then he can see again, right? So yeah, but you don't hear sermons focusing in on the crowd, the neighbors, right? So in another video I'm going to do, I want to talk about the neighbors of John chapter 9, the blind man's neighbors. But for this video, I'm going to talk about the parents. So we always hear sermons about the parents all the time when it comes to John chapter 9, verse 18 through 34. So let me just go ahead and read it. All right, so I think that's a pretty good start. So, all right, so John chapter 9, verse 18. I'm reading from the New International Version Bible. They still do not believe that he had been born blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. All right. All right. I'm going to start highlighting stuff too. Is this your son? They asked. Is this the one you say who was born blind? How is it that he can see? We know he is our son, the parents answered, and we know he was born blind. But how he can see now or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself. So that whole part is very important to remember, all right? Because that's kind of like what the focus of the video will be on my presentation I did for class, the Gospel of John, that class in seminary school, all right? So verse 22, his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Very important to remember, because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders, who already had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, he is of age, ask him. A second time they summoned the man who had been born blind. Give glory to God by telling the truth, they said. We know this man is a sinner. Oh, man. Did you guys hear that? That's what the Pharisees said. This is getting too good. Let's keep on going. He replied, whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, now I can see. Ooh. Now, this is the blind man talking, the man born blind who Jesus healed, right? And I want you guys to hear the language. Like, tell me this guy doesn't sound like Jesus. This is how you know he had a complete, 180 happen to him, a complete change. Like, when Jesus comes into your life and he changes your life, you change. Like, when God comes into your life and, and you get to experience his love and his presence, man, it does something to you. Like, you'll never be the same once you experience this. And you can never go back. I will say it. You can never go back to how you used to be. Because things have just become new. The old way of living has passed away. All you want to do is keep on doing more of that, which is experiencing more of God, being with God, loving on God, just doing everything for God, right? So this man born blind, these Pharisees, right? First of all, when the man was first healed at the very beginning of the chapter in John chapter 9, when he was first healed, the neighbors, the people around him, they saw him begging in the streets. So they were like, ain't this the beggar that used to beg all the time, in the streets? Like, how can he see now? Like, it's just imagine that. He was born blind. He's always been blind. Everybody know him to be blind. His neighbors have always seen him blind. And then miraculously he could just see. Like, that is scary, right? That is intimidating. Like, how you're not gonna just look at him like, oh yeah, that's normal. No, no, you're gonna look at him like he's a freak. Like, how the heck did that happen? You could see me. Like, I'm sure people used to do gestures towards him, like, like doing weird gestures, like you can't see, like you can't see me, like, and then like one day he could just miraculously see what you're doing, right? That you the gestures that you used to always make at him and do to him, he'd be like, man, I can see you, like, you've always done that to me, man. You're a real pain in my butt, man. Like, you always been that mean to me. But anyways, yeah. So that's the man born blind. But anyways, like in another study, I'm gonna talk about the neighbors and how the neighbors gave this man over, the man born blind, over to the Pharisees. So the neighbors questioned, like, was this the man that we've always seen in the streets? Was he the beggar, or was he somebody else that just resembles the beggar, right? And they were kind of divided on, was this the actual man, right? And so that's why the Pharisees was like, the neighbors gave them over to the Pharisees, gave the man born blind over to the Pharisees, because like the Pharisees, the Jewish authorities, like they controlled everything in the Jewish community. So, and the church was really prominent then. So like they just dictated all the affairs and everything like that. So they have the most power, right? So they wanted to give this whole incident over to the Pharisees, basically, so that they can nip this in the bud and figure out what happened. Like, put this man on trial. And anything that had to do with Jesus, like, yes, like, you're going to be put on trial, right? And look at how this man born blind talks on trial. This is how he talks. This is how confident he is in about what Jesus did to him. Like, one of my favorite verses is a life verse. If you, just in case you're just watching me for the first time, Matthew chapter 10, verse 33, it says, if you deny, Jesus said, if you deny me before men, I'll deny you before the Father. And then, like, it's the same verse. It's like in Luke chapter 9, verse 26. It says the same thing, but even worse. It says, Jesus said, if you deny me before men, I'll deny you before the Father and all the heavenly hosts. That is embarrassing. Like, let's just imagine, guys, like, there's a difference between not living for Jesus and then actually denying him publicly, like when your opportunity comes to like profess his name, right? Like, that is the worst. Like, if you denied him, you're going to you kind of reap what you sow, right? Like, so on your judgment day, when you're in front of all the angels and all the heavenly hosts, just imagine how many people are in heaven. Like, who knows? Like, that number is infinite, right? Just like it's more people, I would argue, in biblically it says it's like there's more people in hell than there's going to be in heaven, right? So and the people in heaven, like it says in the Bible, in the book of Revelations, that there'll be legions of angels. How many is a legion? That's a huge number, right? So like there's gonna be a lot of people in heaven. So if you deny God here on earth, like you're kind of sealing your fate of what's gonna happen to you on your judgment day. You're not gonna hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. Now come up higher and receive all my inheritance and all the things I have to offer you. You're not gonna hear that. You're gonna hear, depart from me, for I do not know you. Like, that is the worst thing to hear ever, because you denied Jesus and God all your entire life. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, like the difference between the man born blind and his parents, right? And when push comes to shove and you have to profess your faith, like, how do you do? Like, are you going to crumble in that under that kind of tension, under that kind of adversity, or are you gonna stand up for what's right? Are you gonna stand up for Jesus, right? So, all right, now watch what this man born blind does with the Pharisees, right? So he replied, whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was born blind, and now I see. Then they asked him, the Pharisees asked this man born blind, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? You know how many times they asked him this? They asked him this like at least 4 times. Like, bro, the man got irritated. Verse 27 of John chapter 9, the New International Version Bible. He answered, I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become one of his disciples too? I know that offended the Pharisees, man. Look at how the Pharisees responded. Then they hurled insults at the man. Oh yeah, they were mad. Oh, they were so mad after he said that. All right. They said, the Pharisees said to this man, "You are his fellow disciples. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." Oh my gosh, that's so powerful, guys. You guys see that? We don't know where he comes from. All right. So in John chapter 14, I love the book of John. Like the author, whoever wrote the book of John. All right. So this is what you learn in seminary school. Like the way the Bible was orchestrated, it kind of makes you question your faith and why you even believe in it. So that's why, like, a lot of times, like the stuff that you will learn in seminary school, you can't really tell to people in the congregation because, like, they're baby Christians. They wouldn't be able to handle it. Like, for example, like the name John is kind of just used to say that John wrote the book of John, just to give it clout, basically. Like, like, the name John. Like, just think about that. He's one of 12 disciples. So whoever wrote and was over like the scrolls and translations and like getting this writing into being into what it is today, the Gospel of John. Like they used the disciples John name just to elevate the text. So it could be put, it could be so it could be put in the canon, so it could be above other writings, like the book of Maccabees is another one. There's a lot of books that didn't make it in the Bible that, you know, are no different than the Gospel of John, Matthew, uh, uh, you know, even the minor prophets, Zechariah, Zephaniah. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just the way that the Bible is orchestrated, it came into being is real interesting. But one thing that's not debatable is like it's unknown who wrote the Gospel of John, right? And but whoever wrote it, like the way they wrote it was just so amazing. Like they're narrating what's happening, and like they don't give their opinion about the parents of this story that we're focusing on in John chapter 9, but they do, you know, tell the story enough to like leave it in your hands to say like what's happening here. But like I was trying to say, with the disciples here, man, they said something really profound. And like that's what I was trying to say. Like with the Gospel of John, like John relates everything together in the Gospel of John. Like everything comes back to wherever he wrote before, and or is a foreshadowing of what's about to happen, right? Like it's really cool how he connects everything. So like the way that the Pharisees said this, right? This is just crazy. Verse 28. Then they hurled insults at the man born blind and said, "You are his fellow disciples. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, so as for Jesus, we don't even know where he comes from." Like in the Gospel of John chapter 14. So this is John chapter 9. In John chapter 14, that's how Jesus describes the Holy Spirit. Like the Holy Spirit goes where you don't even know where it's going or where it came from. Just like you don't know where the wind goes to, where it came from, how it moves. You can't predict how the wind's gonna move. Like that's the Holy Spirit. That's what Jesus said about the Holy Spirit and about the wind in John chapter 14, right? So the Pharisees are literally just saying, one, what Jesus said about the Holy Spirit and how God moves. Like, who could put a finger on what next miracle God's going to do? Who could put a finger on, you know, what things God has in store for us? Who could put a finger on, you know, what's to come for all of us when it comes to all the goodness and all the impossibilities and all the stuff that God specializes in that He's going to do for us, right? So, like, who can do those things? Nobody. Like God's gonna do what God's gonna do, and nobody can stop him, right? So the Pharisees saying we don't even know where he comes from. Dang right, like he's of the Holy Spirit, like he's of God, like they're just literally solidifying who Jesus is, right? Even though it's an insult that they intended, you know, to land on this man born blind and essentially on Jesus, right? So like just them saying that is crazy, right? So verse 30, all right, this is too good, all right. All right, verse 30, the man answered, "Now that it is remarkable, you don't even know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes." Ooh, so even though you don't know where he comes from, so the one who you don't know where he comes from, he opens eyes. You know, he heals the lame, he heals the blind. Like this man does miracles. So, and you're saying because you don't know where he comes from, he ain't of God? He does things that only God can do. Like, what are you saying? That's what the man born blind is saying. So, verse 31 of John chapter 9. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Wow. That's what this man born blind says to these Pharisees. Like you guys saying who a godly person is. They said godly people are the ones who are disciples of Moses. And we know that God, because God spoke to Moses, right? That's who the Pharisees say are godly people. But this man born blind, he says, we know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. Wow. This is good. This is good. All right. I read too much because we didn't get to the presentation. All right, but we're here. Last verse. To this they replied, you were steeped. Look at this insult that the Pharisees said back to the man born blind. You were steeped in sin since birth. How dare you lecture us? And they threw him out. Where did they throw him out of? The community, out of the synagogue. Like you guys got to understand, when it comes to being Jewish in that time period, like being a part of the church community is everything. But the Pharisees dictated everything. The rabbis, the Sadducees, so you had to basically suck up to them and do things that they wanted to do. Right? Jesus wasn't even like the mainstay, like the main thing back then when it was his time period and he was alive. So what's funny about verse 34, I'm gonna talk about it in the presentation, but you were steeped in sin at birth. Like when the disciples saw that this man was born blind and he couldn't see, and he was born blind, right? The first question they asked was, who messed up? Whose sin is it that this man is born blind? Was it the parents' fault or the son's fault? That's crazy. Like, what baby sins? Like, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, before you even come into the world, you sin as a baby? Okay. But yeah, that was their logic. Like, who messed up, the parents or the baby? And Jesus said neither. Then he said that the reason why this man was born blind is so that God's will can be done and fulfilled, because I'm about to heal him. And this had to be done so that God could be glorified, right? It was all written and set in stone, and it's all God's will, right? It had nothing to do with the parents. It had nothing to do with this man born blind, this baby, right? So the Pharisees, this is how wicked they are, man. They replied to the man born blind, you were steeped in sin at birth. That's a lie from the devil, man. Like, what? Like, are you kidding me? So they're literally saying what Jesus said was a lie. That, it wasn't because of him that he was born blind, right? But the Pharisees said that, yeah, that's why you were. And then they said, how dare you lecture us? No, you need a lecture. Everybody needs to be lectured every once in a while. If you're not teachable, you just feel the pride. Like even Jesus went to the synagogue and was willing to learn more about God. That's what gets me. So Jesus was willing to go to synagogue, go to church and learn from a pastor who he knows more than, obviously. That's what mind blowing to me. Why would Jesus even go to church? Like he is the church, you know what I'm saying? But he went. It said, and that's how just in case you think I'm just talking. If you look at Luke chapter 4, the very beginning, it says the very first verse. It says that Jesus went into the synagogue, which was his custom. So it's something that he did all the time. His custom. It says it in a few other verses and passages of the Bible in the Gospels. You can look it up, but. All right, let's get to my presentation, man. All right. So, yeah, John chapter 9, man. So, and for Seminary School, for the Gospel of John class, we read this book right here. It is called Characters Studies in the Fourth Gospel. It also, the subtitles, Narrative Approaches to 70 Figures in John. Here goes the author, Stephen A. Hunt D. Francois told me, Ruben Zimmerman. These are the editors. It was forwarded by Craig R. Coaster. All right. And so, like I said, we're focusing on John chapter 9, verse 18 to 34. Did I read the 34? That's crazy. I actually read the 34. All right. And so this chapter of the book that I'm focusing on, so this book right here, Character Studies in the Fourth Gospel, Narrative Approaches to 70 Figures in John. In chapter, I don't know what chapter it was, but it was pages 446 to 450 that we're focusing in on of this book. And that chapter is titled The Parents of the Man Born Blind, the Reason for Fear Without True Reason, right? And so here goes some questions I want you guys to think about before we even tackle the presentation, man. It's about to be deep. I just read John chapter 9, through 18 to 34. But I want you guys, if you want, you can answer these questions or just think about it, but hopefully you answer it in a comment. How has sermons typically been preached when focusing in on the man's born blind's parents, right? And then also, do people see and judge the parents of the healed man who was born blind correctly? How do they translate what the man born blind parents did, and responded to the Pharisees' questions, right? And then how are there many lessons a reader can learn from the actions of the man born blind's parents? So those are some questions to think about and melodate on throughout this video, right? So the first section of that chapter, the parents of the man born blind, the reason for fear without true reason. The first section is titled "Staying Anonymous." It's on page 446. So the parents of the man born blind versus the man born blind, the son, right? So the parents are background characters in this text, but the son, the man born blind, he's the major figure in John chapter 9, from what we've seen, right? And then also the parents of the man born blind, they have no name. And also the man born blind, the son, has no name either. And then the parents of the man born blind are defined in reference to their son, and they're also defined by the act of Jesus giving sight. They are the parents of him who could see again, right? But the man born blind, the difference with him and his parents is he's not defined in reference to his parents. So he's not defined by his parents, like the parents are defined by him in the story, right? That's how the narrator wrote them, the Gospel of John, whoever wrote it, right? So staying anonymous, again, we're still in that section on page 446. So the parents of the man born blind, in contrast to their son, they behave as no-name individuals without personality. They speak only after being asked to reply. So my question is, would they have even spoken that's my question right here. Do you think the parents would have spoken up for their son if they were not even prompted to by the Pharisees, right? I don't think they would have, right? So, yeah, this is good, right? So they speak only after being asked to reply, and they demonstrate a sense of control. They do not demonstrate a sense of control over their own fate. Instead are motivated by a strong sense of fear of the possible actions of others. So, and we see that with John chapter 9, verse 22. That's what I was trying to say. Like, this verse is very important for the whole entire study, right? So in verse 22 of John chapter 9 from New International Version Bible reads, his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who already had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue, right? So the next section of that chapter was refusing answers. That's still on page 446. And so in a narrative setting, so that's one of the ways to interpret the Bible, one of the ways to understand what's going on in the text. So, it's narrative with some of the passages and texts in the Bible, and the Gospel of John is definitely a narrative. So when looking at it from a narrative perspective, the Gospel of John, by the narrative setting, the appearance of the blind man's parents is significant. John chapter 9, verse 18 closes the first encounter of the man born blind with the religious authorities and introduces the interview of his parents. The interrogators are characterized as not believing that the man was formerly blind, thus they deny that Jesus had performed the miracle. That's how the Pharisees are looked at. That's how we look at the Pharisees, the religious leaders who are questioning and who hurled insults at this man born blind, right? So they didn't believe the man was formerly blind, which is why they asked the parents, was he born blind? Or is he in cahoots with Jesus? That's what we're going to talk about. And then they asked, the second question was, how did he receive his sight? The parents refused to answer this. So they denied that Jesus had performed a sign. That's what the Pharisees were doing. They were trying to get the parents to do the same thing, but they refused to answer that question. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So still on that refusing answers section of this chapter, John 9, in John 9, the son himself has already been interviewed before his parents are addressed in John chapter 9, verse 13 to 17. That's where the son is being interviewed, right? He was interviewed before, right? And the legal interview of the parents consists of a short question by the Jews, John 9:19, and a longer reply by the parents in John 9:20 to 21. The narrator's comments closes the episode by interpreting the parents' reply in John chapter 9, verse 22 to 23. And we're going to read that real quick. So John chapter 9, verse 22 to 23, and this is really important to remember throughout the whole presentation, right? So His parents, the man born blind parents, said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had already decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That is why his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So this is what the parent, like the narrator's comment, he was literally saying, based on the parents' actions, like this is, you know, that's what's crazy. Like in the Bible, in the book of James, it says that we must be doers and not hearers only, right? We must be doers of the faith, not hearers only, right? Then it also, that's basically saying you got to practice what you preach. You got to walk it like you talk it. Like you can't just say you believe in Jesus, but you're not going to act you're not going to act out your faith. You're not going to live out your faith. Like your faith ain't going to be evident through the way that you live. Like James even said that, like, show me a man who says he believes in Jesus, but doesn't have works to back it up. And I'll show you another person who says that he has faith and but they have works to back it up, right? Our actions should line up with what we profess and what we say we believe in. Like we should act like our Father who's in heaven, right? That's what Jesus said in John chapter 15. He said, the world doesn't like you because it didn't like me. Just like how the Father is, that's how the Son is. That's how the daughter is. Like they only resemble who the Father is and where the Father came from because they are a part of him, right? We ain't no different. The student is no different than a teacher. A Jedi Padawan is no different than a Jedi Master. Like whoever taught you, whoever brought you into this world, more than likely going to have a huge influence on how you come about, how you think, how your mannerisms, the way you carry yourself, your demeanor, right? So the narrator's comment closes the episode by interpreting the parents' reply, right? So he doesn't really, I'm going to say this again, but the narrator doesn't give his opinion about, what he thinks about the situation. He's going to leave it in our hands to do that, right? So let's keep on going, man. This is about to get good, right? So the Jews' question consists of two parts regarding. Let me make this bigger so you guys can see it. All right, I didn't see what it looked like on y'all end, but hopefully it works. All right, yeah, all right. I got 90 slides or 95, something like that. All right, so the Jews' questions consist of two parts regarding the relationship of the healed man to the parents and the issue of how the man born blind is not able to see. So together, these questions seem to assume some form of fraudulent collusion between Jesus and the man born blind. This can be perhaps unveiled by the parents identifying this individual as their son. So I had to look up what fraudulent collusion means on Google, and here's what it means. So it's a type of fraud that occurs when two or more parties conspire to deceive and manipulate financial records or to influence a market to their advantage. It can be difficult to detect because of the clandestine nature of collaboration. I don't get that last word, but anyway. Fraudulent collusion is when two parties work together to influence whatever they want to influence on whoever they're trying to, have influence on. So they could deceive and manipulate, conspire how they want to tell a lie, that's how it's typically done. So that's a fraudulent collusion. That's what the Pharisees thought that Jesus and the man born blind was doing. They thought and assumed that they were in cahoots with each other. So the Pharisees, the religious leaders, the Jewish authorities, they heard about the miracle of the man born blind being able to see. And so it didn't make sense to them. They were like, how can a man born blind now see? Like, that's the first question. Second question is, like, was he really even born blind if he can see now? Like, they haven't heard of anything like that. So it's not true to them. Like, it has to be a lie. And then they already didn't like Jesus. They were hearing about all these miracles. So, okay, that's the real question. We ain't seen none. He ain't done nothing in front of us. He's a liar. Like, he's a false prophet. So, like, they already were gunning at Jesus, right? But then this man born blind just happened to be caught up in a fire, like caught up in a line of fire. So, like, now this man born blind is in cahoots with Jesus. So that's how the Pharisees saw this. This was a fraudulent collision, right? So the Jews' question consists of two things, right? They want to know the parents' relationship with this man born blind. Was he truly born blind? That's the question they asked the parents. And if they said no, then that means this man born blind was in cahoots with Jesus and was doing fraudulent collision, like, trying to deceive the market, trying to influence the market, and deceive and conspire and manipulate everybody into thinking that Jesus was a savior, Jesus was a healer, Jesus is God, all those things, right? And the Pharisees wanted to nip that in the bud. So that's the first question that they had and they were going to the parents to answer this. Only they could answer this because they raised him, brought their son into this world, and all those things. So the Jews' second question consists of the issue of how the man born blind is now able to see. And so that was truly debated as to what that is. Like the first one, it could be debated, but the parents know, right? The second question, now that's is where it's fishy, like, you know what I mean, to the Pharisees, for real. All right. So let's keep on going through the presentation. All right. So in John 9, the reading is enhanced by the parents' declaration in John 9:20 that their son was indeed born blind, which reflects the language of the interrogator's question in John 9:19, which appears to be an attempt to dispel any doubt concerning the son's identity or the basic facts of his life story. So characterizing the parents, which is what the narrator is doing in John chapter 9, whoever wrote John chapter 9, right? So it's important for the characterization of the parents that their reply only partially answers the interrogator's question. In their response, the parents are careful to affirm only that which cannot be denied, that the man born blind is their son, and he was indeed born blind. That's what they said with their first answer. So listen, I told you guys at the very beginning of this presentation, well, not at the beginning, but 2 slides before this, that the Pharisees' questions consist of 2 parts. Is this your son, to the parents? And then, how is he now able to see? That's the question that the Pharisees are targeting at the parents, who are the focus in John chapter 9, verse 18 to 34, which is what we're talking about right now, right? So their reply, confirmed the identity of the man born blind and his former physical status. But beyond this, they were clearly reluctant to comment. Wow, they were reluctant to comment, right? So they confirmed their son's identity in his physical status, but they reluctantly and refused to reply about the second question, which is how was he healed, right? So the parents' answer clearly does not function as a reply to the issues raised by the question. Instead, serves to refer the Jews back to the person they have asked about, right? And all right, so in John chapter 9, verse 18 to 21, reading it again. So from the New International Version Bible, they still did not believe that he had been born blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. So that's really key, guys. You guys see that? So until they sent for the man's parents, some of them believed after they heard this from the man's parents, right? Surely the parents know if this man was born blind, and if he was, like, this miracle really happened. So some of the Pharisees believed that this miracle actually happened, but other ones didn't. So there's a huge division. So verse 19, is this your son? They asked, is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that he can see again? We know he is our son. That's what they said. We know he is our son, the parents answered. And we know he was born blind. That's what they know. But how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself. Wow. So my question to you guys is, you guys can, think about it, marinate on it, or respond in the comment section. How do you feel about the parents' reply back to the Pharisees in response to the question, how can your son now see? See, they were confident about, they said, we know he is our son. So when the Pharisees asked, is this your son? Yeah, this is our son. Was he born blind? Yes, we know he is our son, and we know he was born blind. But how he was healed, how can he see again? That was the third question. We don't know. He is of age. Ask of him. So, yeah. So I'm going to answer that question too. How do you feel about the parents' reply back to the Pharisees in response to this question? How can your son see? My response, I'll answer it later. Right. So let's keep on going. So the parents answer, although the parents confirmed the identity of the man born blind and his former physical status, they define themselves by their ignorance. That's how they define themselves, right? That's the whole text. That's what the narrator is going with. So 2 times they say, we don't know. We don't know. Even if they do not know what actually happened in John 9, 1 through 7, which was the first verses right? In John chapter 9, which we didn't read, which is just Jesus healing the man born blind with mud, right? They knowingly portray themselves, the parents, as people who only know what cannot be denied, that their son was their son and that he was born blind. We just read that in John chapter 9, verse 20. Uh, one person in academia, I don't know how to say their name right here, they said this does not really say anything at all about Jesus. And so that's where John is coming from. Like whoever wrote the art, whoever the author of John is, like they're going for and trying to convey that everything's about Jesus. Everything comes back to Jesus. All of our lives come back to Jesus. So how we represent Jesus, how we portray Jesus, how we speak about Jesus, how we profess Jesus, how we proclaim Jesus, how we do everything, how we work towards Jesus. Like everything in our lives circle around back to Jesus, right? He is the superstar of the show. We're just stars. He's the superstar. We're just playing our roles in the cast. He's the true star, right? So the parents really refuse to give Jesus the spotlight that he deserved. Now we don't know why. We don't know if the parents was present during the miracle that happened when Jesus, spit mud on the ground. He spit on the ground, made on the dirt, made mud, and then put it on their son's eyes. We don't know if they were there when the miracle actually happened, right? But how they respond to the question, how can your son see? Like, I'm sure the son told the parents already. They were reluctant to even say that because they weren't there, probably, and maybe they truly didn't know. Maybe their son was taken up by the Pharisees real quick, right? Like when his neighbors, gave him over to the Pharisees. Who does that sound like? That sounds like Jesus. Like this man born blind, symbolizes Jesus in a lot of ways. Like Jesus is absent from what we've seen in the text right now, right? In John chapter 9, verse 18 to 34. But even though he's absent, he's still present. And he's present through the man born blind. Like after he was changed, he was resembling Jesus through his sarcasm with responding to the Pharisees and saying, I told you how I could see. I told you what happened to me. And you refused to answer. Like if this man wasn't truly from God, he wouldn't have done this miracle. And you telling me I'm a disciple of him? Well, okay. Like, he just said sarcastic things. Like he sounded like Jesus sounds like when Jesus get irritated. When Jesus responds back sarcastically, because that's what he does, right? So this is what this man symbolized. He also symbolized a lot of things. Like we'll talk about it with the neighbors in our next study, in my next PowerPoint presentation. But with the neighbors, when they came to the man born blind and asked, weren't you the beggar in the street that's always was begging and was blind? His neighbor asked him this, all of them, and he said to them, I am. Who says I am in the Bible? God. When Moses said, who should I say is sent me? When God told him to go to Pharaoh, because he got to come by some name, some authority, and God told him, say I am sent you, right? The great I am. God, right? And then Jesus, we know in the Gospel of John, there's 7 I ams, right? I am statements. I am the bread of life. I am the truth. I am the door. I am the gate. I am the light of the world. Like there's so many 7 I ams that Jesus professes who he is, right? So like, and I think Jesus, there was a time Jesus even said I am too. Like, but like in John chapter 9, Jesus may not be present throughout the whole entire story in John chapter 9. You guys see what I said? But when he's not present, he's present through this man born blind. So that's the question. Like, is God present in your life? Right? Is God present with you? Can people see Jesus through you? Right? Because you're supposed to be a living sermon. You're supposed to resemble God. You're supposed to reflect God, right? So that's what this text is telling us. So it's going real deep with it, right? So let's go to the next part, right? So and let me know you guys like my PowerPoint presentation. I think it looks pretty, man. It's real good, right? So the parents' response in John chapter 9 resembles a group of hidden Christian Jews who do not publicly confess their belief and stay within the limits of their social and religious group. The parents function in a narrative, so in the story, as negative screw-ups in comparison to the son. So that's the comparison and the takeaway of John chapter 9. Like, how does the parent stack up with the son? That's the takeaway that the author in the narrative story, in the narrative sense, is trying to get to us, right? And trying to convey to us. Like there's a way that we should act and come about and walk around in this life, right? And the way that the parents did is not how we should act. And the way that the son is acted is how we should act, right? And conduct ourselves, right? So the parents represent a group of hidden Christian Jews, right? That's the question to you guys. Like, do you publicly confess your faith? Or do you stay within the limits of your social group, of your society, of your religious group? Like, are you hiding your light underneath the table? Like, light was not a lamps. Were not meant to be put underneath the table or underneath the bed. It was meant to put in a certain place in a room to where it could permeate throughout the whole entire room and spread throughout the whole entire room so more things could be seen. If you put light underneath the table or underneath the bed, like only so much stuff will be seen in the room. You can't see in certain places. And what does darkness symbolize, guys? Confusion, being lost, not knowing the truth, only filled with lies. Darkness symbolizes a lot of things. God doesn't want us to walk in darkness. He wants us to walk in the light. He wants to have the light of life. Jesus is the light of life. The Bible is the light of life. The word is the word of God. The Bible is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. So this is what light is supposed to do. You're the light of the world. So three things are light: the Bible, Jesus, and you. We are supposed to be reflecting Jesus in the Bible. We are living sermons. I keep on going. So we aren't supposed to be quiet about who we are and what we represent. That don't mean you need to always talk and just all you do is talk, talk, talk. There's a time and a place for everything. There's a time to preach. There's a time to shut up. There's a time to talk. There's a time to stay quiet. There's a time for silence. There's a time for debate, right? There's a time and place for everything. And as believers, we got to know what the moment is, what the occasion is, what the season is, and when it is time to stand up for what we believe in, and when it's time to sit down and just listen and just pay attention. And before we act, before we respond, because we need to respond only when the iron's hot. The opportunity of a lifetime must be seized in a lifetime of an opportunity. Just like trouble don't last always, opportunity doesn't either. Life is an opportunity. It's filled with a lot of opportunities. There's an opportunity always to reach somebody for Christ, but it won't happen always. Sometimes it's just a time for planting seeds. Sometimes it's a time just to, give a hug and just be kind and show love. Sometimes there's a time to send a DM and there's a time not to send a DM, right? You see what I'm saying? There's a time and a place for everything. And the parents missed out on their opportunity, evidently. So the parents represent a group of hidden Christians, Jews, who publicly do not confess their belief. Do you publicly profess and confess your belief about Jesus? And if you don't, you really need to ask yourself, whose side are you on based on your actions? Because that's the key. In John chapter 9, that's the key message. Actions speak louder than words. You can say you believe in Jesus all you want, but if your actions don't line up, Jesus even said it. This is all the book of John. We're staying in the book of John, guys. It's crazy. John chapter 14, verse 15. Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. If you love me, keep my commandments. What does that mean? You can't say you love God if you don't do what he says to do. That's another verse in Matthew. I forgot who Jesus was talking to, but he said, how can you say you love me, but you don't do what I say to do? How can you say you follow me and you follow God, but you don't do what he says to do? You don't. How can you say you love somebody, but you don't show them that you love them? Right? That goes back to a relationship. Just think logically in a relationship setting. You can't say somebody loves you, right, if they don't communicate with you. Like, imagine being married to somebody and you ain't talked to them for 5 years, but they say they love you. That's not love. Are you kidding me? Like, forgot about me. Like, how can somebody say they love you, but they can't accept who you are? They want to create you into something else. Like, you don't ever measure up to who they think you should be, right? They want you to be something that you're not. That's not love. You can't accept me for who I am. But God accepts you for who you are. God is the standard of love. He done showed you what love is, right? So you guys see what I'm saying. Let's keep on going, man. This is some good stuff. All right. So I was going to ask everybody this question. Which side should readers of the Gospel of John conclude that the man born blind's parents were on? Jesus' side, so their son's side, or man's side, the religious establishment, the Jews, the Pharisees, based on how they answered the question uh, how is your son healed? That's really the focus of the video. But they did answer the other question correctly. Was this your son, and was he born blind? Right. So at least they answered that question. And so another question I have for you guys is: can the readers of the fourth gospel conclude that the parents were glorifying God by acting as secret Christians and by not confessing the miracle Jesus had done? And I'll go ahead and say, like, sometimes, guys, like, there are secret Christians. Like, God has people. There's always a lamb in the bush. So God has people working on your behalf that don't always vocalize it, don't always say it. Like, they don't have to. Like, honestly, and that's good because they're secret. Acting as hidden Christians really helps you out, right? Because they can vote in places that you didn't think that they were in, right? Some politicians, I'm sure, are of God and love the Lord, right? I don't know who, but God has a ram in every bush, right? There's always people at work in the body of Christ that you don't think that there are people at work in the body of Christ at, right? So, yeah. So maybe the parents are representing that in the Gospel of John. So, like, that's why I like seminary school, guys. Like, there's a lot of ways to interpret scripture. Like, there's not always one set way. This is the only way that this text is talking about. This is what it is. Like, that's not the way the Bible works, bro. Like, when you study it deep, every single verse, every single passage, you can go in a lot of different routes. That's why you hear different sermons on different messages, right? Just because one preacher said another thing, don't make them a false prophet. Just because you like a text being this, right? Like, for example, the blind man's parents. A lot of people will go with. I asked everybody a question earlier, like, how are sermons typically preached about the man's born blind's parents? It's typically preached in a negative light. Like, everybody always say, man, these parents are of the devil, man. Like, they didn't profess Jesus when they should have professed Jesus. Okay, what if they were secret Christians? Which, that's my argument, right? So one of the points I was going to make is this. I'm going to just read it so I don't butcher it and I can just go right in, right? So with the parents answering the first question, that their son was born blind and that this was their son. They answered it twice. This is our son, right? Is this your son? That's what the Pharisees asked them. And then they asked the parents, was he born blind? They said yes to both. So they were essentially already confirming the second question. How was this man healed? Dude, they said he was born, this is their son, and he was born blind. But he can see. You can see it through actions. That's the Gospel of John. Act on your faith. So what if his parents are secret Christians? They were professing Jesus just by saying, and just by owning up to those two things, which they could have denied. They could have said, no, that's not our son, and no, he was not born blind. Why? Because we saw in verse 22 of chapter 9, I think it was verse 22, they said the narrator of the Gospel of John, whoever wrote the Gospel of John, he said that they answered the Pharisees' question, how can he see? We don't know. They answered it that way because they feared that the Pharisees would excommunicate them from the community. That's what the author stated. So, like, maybe they cared more about man's opinions and man's praise than God's, owning up to Jesus and what he did and having their sons back with the second question. But the son already got the second question answered. He got that. He already answered it multiple times. And he can keep on answering. He don't mind. He's starting to get irritated that we saw that, right? Going all the way to verse 34. But, like, yeah, you guys see what I'm saying. But the parents, man, like, the son couldn't answer that first question. Like, were you born blind? And then, are these your parents? Like, no, they want the parents to answer this because they want the son. They thought the son was in cahoots with Jesus, and like they were running up a muck, running up a scam, right? So let's keep on going through the slide. You see how you can interpret John chapter 9? Like, that's why I like seminary school. Like, you can go so deep in a text that you go so deep, and there's so many more questions. You're like, what's true? Which one? So, like, the sermons are endless. Like, the messages are endless about how you can teach a text. Like, I love it, man. So this section is titled Under Pressure, page 448 of that chapter in that book. All right, so it might be true the Joannan Christians who first read the story recalled the same experiences in the story. Whatever experience it may have been, The aim is to encourage the readers not to behave like the parents, rather to imitate their son's behavior. So, in a narrative setting, which is how the book of John is constructed and written, especially John chapter 9, it develops a social hierarchy that includes the parents. The parents are called to come by the opposing group. In John 9:18, the opposing group obviously is the Pharisees, but it can also be argued that it was the neighbors too, which I'm going to talk about in another video. So, the readers might be stunned by the different and passive reply of the parents. The narrator gives an explanation for the behavior of his characters in terms of social power, right? In John 9:22 to 23, which I already said, the parents were afraid because the other group is the leading party, and that leading party, the Jewish authorities, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they had the power to include or exclude people within the community. So the narrator only describes the parents' behavior, does not give explicit qualitative judgment on the behavior of the characters. Judgment is left to the reader. The reader knows Jesus has the power to lose none of those who have been given to him by the Father. That's John 6:39, 10:29, and 17:6. And the reader will learn the fearless confessor to be the son, not the parents. And that's a question I got for you guys. Like, are you a fearless confessor right here of Jesus? Like the son, not like the parents. You guys heard how vocal and bold the son was in response to the Pharisees compared to the parents, right? So the son was called into the flock by Jesus. Jesus, the good shepherd, well, good shepherd in John 10:3, found him. And John, just like, the lost sheep, John 9:35, but that's not the lost sheep, but you got to see it. All right. And Jesus also reveals himself to the man born blind. So this son had these things happen to him. Has these things happened to you? And are you vocal for Christ because these things happen to you? Were you called into God's flock? Were you called into the kingdom? Like, did God call you to be his and be with him for all eternity? Is he your shepherd? Is he guiding you in life? Has he found you? Right? You don't find God, God finds you. Right? Because it's a work of God for that to happen. For God to reveal himself to you, there's nothing more beautiful in this life. And when that happens to you, one of my favorite songs of all time, right? My church sings it a lot. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. My church used to sing it, right? The church I grew up in was called Scotts Chapel AME in Hermitage, Tennessee. My dad preached there for 23 years, which doesn't happen in the AME church, and we're in the 13th district, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the AME church, right? Let me pull it up real quick. Said, I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it, couldn't keep it. Yeah, I'll go ahead and sing it for you guys. All right, yeah, here goes the song. All right, I should put it. I'm gonna put it in the description of the video. Go to my YouTube channel, Uplift Past Crossroads. You're gonna see the description. All right. So the song is titled "Couldn't Keep It to Myself." Right. I don't know who sings it. I can pull it up later, but it's one of my favorite songs of all time. Couldn't keep it to myself. All right. So, and the song goes like this. Said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it. Couldn't keep it. Said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself what the Lord has done for me. Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, that's all you need to know. All right. So when God does something for you, it's really hard to contain and hold it for yourself, to hoard it from the world, to hoard it for yourself. Like when God does something good for you, just think about it, when something good news happened for you, like when something just you dream of happening for you, like you got that dream job, you got that dream bonus, you accomplished your dream. Like that's not something you just keep to yourself. That's something you tell to the world. Like when you find your woman, like your wife, that's not something you just keep to yourself and you just hide and keep secret. Like it's something you profess and you say out loud. I just showed you my son. My son ain't even came into the world yet. I'm proud of my son. I don't care what he comes out like. I mean, I want him to be healthy just for life to be easy for him and for us. But like, I want him to be healthy and just have life just goes as easy as possible for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want what's best for him. But like, you guys see what I'm saying? Like, I can't keep the good things that God has done for me and is doing for me and will do for me a secret, right? I can't hoard my gift that I have to offer the world, my light of the world. I can't hide that under a table. It's not meant to be under a table. I can't hide my light of the world, you know, under a bed. It's not meant to be under a bed. And some Christians are living like that. And that's John, the narrator's whole point. Whoever wrote the Gospel of John, that's their whole point with John chapter 9. You're meant to live a certain type of way. You can't live in a bubble. Life ain't meant to be lived hidden and in secret. Like if you're living like that, that means you have something to hide. That means you have something to be ashamed of. And as a believer, what in the world do you have to be ashamed of? What in the world do you have to hide? Nothing. That's how good God is. He makes you want to come into the light. He makes you want to speak up when you wouldn't have ever spoken up. He makes you want to say things you ain't never thought you were capable of saying and never thought you could have said, but you done said it. And it was the most profound thing anybody's ever heard. Just because he spoke through you and spoke for you. Like God is filled with that many miracles, man. So like, that's what the Gospel of John, chapter 9, this whole study is telling us, man. It's telling us so many stuff, man. I'm going to keep on reading, man. So the reader, whoever comes across John chapter 9 and reads John chapter 9, can make judgments on the grounds that the parents seem to know that a sign of Jesus has taken place. The reader knows this should lead to belief just by these verses, right? This is all the Gospel of John. Just focusing on what John has always said. So belief. You know, how does somebody come to belief? Right? That's in John chapter 2, verse 11, chapter 11, verse 47 to 48, and chapter 12, verse 11, right? So the parents' unwillingness to confirm any knowledge of Jesus associates them with the religious authorities, with the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the people who are questioning Jesus, really, and want to attack Jesus and come for Jesus' ministry, right? So the religious authorities, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, there's another group, there's a few of them, but anyways, the religious authorities also deny any knowledge of Jesus or his origin in John chapter 9, verse 29 to 30. So by the narrator strategy of the text, the reader might be encouraged to conclude that the parents are on the side of the Jewish authorities because the parents are what? Your actions speak louder than your words. Here goes the parents' actions, right? They're non-confessors who are not cast out of the synagogue, not cast out of the community. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Thus, they fall under the same condemnation in John chapter 12, verse 42, and they love human glory more than the glory of God. So we see in John chapter 12, verse 42, I'm so good. Look at that verse. Yet at the same time, many, even among the leaders, believed in Jesus. But because of the Pharisees, they would not openly acknowledge their faith for the fear they would be put out of the synagogue. That's the question, guys. So these parents, okay, this text so deep, bro. I asked everybody earlier, are the parents on Jesus' side or on the son's side? So are they on the world side, the Pharisee side, the religious establishment, tradition, religion, or are they on the side of Jesus, on the side of light, on the side of truth, on the side of belief in the Messiah, in Jesus, in God, right? On the side of hope, right? I keep on going, right? Which side are they on? The side of man's glory or God's glory? And obviously, based on their actions, they're on the side of the world. They feared being excommunicated from the community. Guys, some communities you just can't be in as a believer. Some groups of people you can't be around, right? Because evil company corrupts good habits. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. Also, and I'm going to read it in Psalms chapter 1. I've done a few videos on John chapter 1, but I just want to do a whole study going deep on every single verse. There's only 6 verses. And in John chapter 1, verse 1, it reads this. It says, blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is the law of the Lord, who meditates on his word, on his law day and night. All right, I'm going to stop there. That's all you need to know. All right. So it says blessed. What does blessed mean? Happy, peaceful, tranquility. Like what it does blessed means a lot of things, guys. It means so many things. Be at peace with, being right standing with God, know where your destination is going to be when you die. Like there's a lot of comfort when it comes to being blessed, right? So blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked. That says a lot because each one progresses. So walks in step with the wicked. That's one progression. So just to start, taking the way that wicked people take, start acting a little bit, walking out, right? Stepping with the wicked. And it's a progression, right? So you walk with the wicked, then you start standing with them. So you start standing on the same things that they stand on. You start believing in the same things they believe in. You start, you know, going with the politicians they go with. Starting to side with the things they side with, right? Which, if they're sinners, so stand in the way of sinners. They're not standing with God. Like, all right, walking with the wicked. They're not going to walk with God. All right. So are these your friends? You're not blessed then. You can't be blessed. These are just the first two steps. The last one is sit in the company of mockers. See, if your friends or people you're closest with, if I was to ask you, who are the 5 people you're the closest with? Who are the 5 people who knows you the best? Who you spend the most time with? You guys see what I'm saying? Who has the most influence on you? If your 5 lead you to walk in and step with the wicked, standing in the way of sinners, but then lastly, they mock God, mock the Bible, mock everything you believe in, scorn your calling. Say that, you walking for God the way that God called you to do it, and you tell them what that is, and they say, man, that's dumb. Like, why would you do that? Like, if you sit in the company of mockers, that says a lot about you. Like, that's just turmoil, just to begin with. Evil company corrupts good habits. How is that going to be blessed? You got the parents of this man born blind in the seat of mockers. They insulted the man born blind. And in doing that, they were insulting Jesus. And the parents want to sit with them, stand with them, walk with them. It don't even matter how you slice it if they were secret Christians. I changed my mind. I thought they were secret Christians. They ain't secret Christians no more. these parents, based on their actions, like if they want to be represented by and be associated with the Pharisees and religious authorities of that time period of the synagogue, nah, you're on the wrong side. You're like, no, you're non-confessors who don't want to be cast out of that community that you need to be cast out of. Like, you don't need to have anything to do with them. So that means you're going to fall under the same fate that the Pharisees will fall under, which we don't have a good. When we study the Bible and you believe in the Bible and all that stuff, we don't have a good, we don't think too nicely about the Pharisees, right? Nobody wants to be a Pharisee, right? So like, to fall under that condemnation that they're going to have, like Jesus even said it in Matthew chapter 7. I think that's no, it's not Matthew 7. One of the chapters is woe is them. Like, woe is you. Like, you whitewashed tombs. Like, you make important these things, right? You add it to the law of the Bible, of the gospel, of the 10 commandments. You added hundreds of them, hundreds of laws that weren't even laws to begin with. You elevated those laws, right? But you forsake what's most important, which is loving your neighbor, justice, mercy, forgiveness, how you treat your neighbor, which that's the true love of God. But you elevate all these religious things. That's the community that they were in. And you want to stay in that community? You want to acknowledge yourself with that community. That's not the right thing to fear. You fear man, but you don't fear God. The question is, guys, is that you? Like, do you care about being a people pleaser more than you care about pleasing God? See, that was my sin. I said it before, I'll say it again. Like, I'm going to do a whole series on this. But I really feel like in order to come to Jesus, in order to come to God, to really know you're saved, whatever you struggle with the most in this life, you have to give over to him. But what's funny, even when you give that over to him, there's other things to give over to him. So for me, my number one thing that I had to give over to God to become saved, my number one weakness was being a people pleaser. I just wanted everybody to like me. I just wanted everybody to love me. I wanted everybody to accept me. And no matter how hard you try, God literally had to say this to me. No matter how hard you try, there's going to be some people that just don't like you. No matter how hard you work, they just don't think you're a hard worker. They think you're ugly and you're lazy just because that's what they want to think. Some people just don't want to be around you. So no matter how hard, how funny, I thought I wanted to be a comedian. So I thought if I made everybody laugh, they would love me. Because they love, who doesn't like a comedian? But not every comedian's like. so like no matter how you slice it, some people are just not gonna like you like that. But you know who does love you and who likes you, you don't even gotta fight for their approval. You already have it. It's God's. Now imagine you try to fight for his approval, how much he'll approve of you, how much he'll love you. Like he loves you and you don't even have to do anything for him. He loves you and you don't even have to think about him or do anything for him at all for the rest of your life, and he still loves you. Now, give him what he deserves back, right? So, all right. So I was gonna ask everybody this question, and then we're gonna conclude this. Let me just read out the slides. That's some good stuff, man. It's deep. Let's finish this out. So another question is, did the parents care about man's approval / applause more than God's? Yeah, obviously they did. All right. So the parents function as narrative characters in a particular narrative setting. They serve as a narrative link between the healing of their son, the initial investigation of the Pharisees / Jews in John 9, 8 through 17, the interrogation of the healed one, 9, 24, John 9, 24 to 34, and the healed one's way to a new encounter with his healer, John 9, 35 to 38. So, yeah, this is on pragmatist. So if you guys know what that word means, let me know, because I barely know what it means. I don't know what it means. I'll just go there. So this page 449 and 450 of that book, right? So the parents are characters who give witness to the dangers of confessing Jesus. The parents reveal the explicit motivation for their claim to limited knowledge in John 9:20. And then the narrator of the Gospel of John gives an explanation for their behavior. They feared the Jews because anyone who confesses Christ will be cast out of the synagogue. So the characters fearing the Jews explains why the parents refused to make a statement. How was your son healed? It also highlights the portrayal of the son as a figure who gives a clear statement. So guys, like, you don't give a clear statement, clear evidence if it's not evident and boldly seen in bold letters, like loudly, that you're a follower of Christ, like the son, the man born blind, the son. You're living the wrong way. This is what the narrator in the Gospel of John 9 is trying to talk about. So the portrayal of the parents in John 9, 18 to 23 prepares the reader to understand another character of the story, the man born blind. The man born blind, the son acts without fear. His parents do not do the same thing in the same situation. So the son is cast out by the religious and social community in John 9:34, referring to John 9:22. He is found, the man born blind, the son, he's found as a believer at the conclusion of the story in John 9:38 by the main hero, Jesus, of the whole Johannine text, which is the Gospel of John. The whole Johannine text is another name for all the Gospel of John. So, yeah, we see that at the very end of the Gospel of John, chapter 9, that Jesus and the man born blind, as soon as the man born blind was cast out of this religious community because he was excommunicated, Jesus accepted him to his community. So he became a follower of Jesus, right? So my question is, what do you think that the author wanted the reader to take away from the parents saying to the Jews that they did not know how their son can now see? And I think we did a good job answering that. So, and then which side should readers conclude the parents were on? The son, the man born blind, Jesus, his followers, or the Jewish authorities? All right, so in summary, the parents of the man born blind invites the reader to not fear, rather than fearing, give witness and confess Christ. And also the parents of the man born blind invites the readers not to act like these non-characters, these no-name characters in relation to Jesus, who passively act only out of limited resistance. So, and they did that by only accepting what is undeniable, which was their son. He was born blind, but they then referred to their son to answer the second question. How was he made well? How can he now see? Like, that's a big question to answer for believers. Like, yeah, that's how you guys gotta look at it, guys. Like, how can you now see? Like, I was gonna ask everybody too, like, do you think this text is talking about physical blindness? Like, I know based on John 9, 1 through 7, like, yeah, it's physical blindness, but like it's deeper than that in the Gospel of John. Like, is this man born blind? Like, is his healing really about sight, like physical sight, or spiritual sight. Like he couldn't just see, right, physically. Now he could see spiritually. But the religious establishment, the Pharisees, his neighbors, even his parents, like they were still blind. That's the question. Can you really see? Can you really see what's true, what's evident? Like, can you really see if the society, the groups that you're in, like who you're associated with, your friends, like if God really opened your eyes to see, like, are they the best group to be around? That job that you have, is it the best job to be in? Like, what is God true calling for your life? Are you walking in it? Or are you are you sitting with mockers? Like, how are you really living? Like, so like spiritual enlightenment, spiritual sight, vision. Like, do you have it? Like, are you walking in it? Like, this man born blind can see, and he can see clearly. Yeah, the religious establishment, I'm sure he was a part of it, believed in it. But after his miracle with Jesus, his encounter with Jesus, man, y'all don't know anything. My parents don't know anything. You know what I'm saying? That's the man's conclusion, the man born blind. And now he wants to walk with Jesus instead. Like, is that you? Can you see? Are you sure? Right? So, like, yeah, this story's so good, man. Then also in summary, the figure of the man, the figure of the parents of the man born blind invites the reader to act differently, to behave fearlessly like their son. The figure of the man born blind invites the reader to actively resist by confessing Jesus. And my last question is, did you learn anything new that you never thought about before with the parents of the man born blind? Like, and that's the video, guys. Like, did you enjoy yourself? Like, man, it was a lot. Almost an hour and 20 minutes, man. Like, I did a lot of talking, like breaking down stuff. I should have just talked out through the slides and just that way, but like I really had to make sure you guys understood the story before I did that. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. But yeah, so this is some of the stuff we learned in seminary school, man. I love seminary school so much. Like, you think you know a text, you think you done heard it preached a lot of times, but you ain't heard it translated the way that it's supposed to be translated. So like one thing in seminary school that we learn is like the way we read the Bible is based on our context. It's based on how our reality is, and not just our reality, but just how life is to our community and how we've always known it. But that's the wrong way to read scripture verses. That's the wrong way to read the Bible, especially the New Testament. Like, we have to read the New Testament and the Bible in a way that we go back to that time period. We go back to who the author is writing to in that community, and how that community is, and how the world was in that setting in that time period, so that we can really gather the information that we need to apply that text the way that it needs to be applied and read. Right? It's a certain way that the author wrote it to be interpreted, because it was experienced in a way that that everybody, all the readers in that time period would understand. But like for us, we're in a different time period. 2,000 something years have elapsed. I think that's the word I'm looking for. I'm such a nerd now. So like, yeah, like our world is way different than their world. The way we see life is way different than the way they see life, and the way that the author wrote life to be. So like, you can't interpret scripture the way you want to interpret it, or the way everybody's interpreting it now. Like, you have to go back to that time period, see how they actually understood the text, and like really, that's when you get to see all the revelation and all the truth that God wants you to glean from that text. So like that's what we were doing. We were reading the Gospel of John, chapter 9, through a narrative lens, because that's how the book of John was written, the Gospel of John, the Johannine text, right? So you guys learned a new word if you didn't know it. So guys, if you enjoyed it, man, I work really hard on my social media pages, man. I just went live for an hour and 20 minutes. So make sure to tell people about your boy, Sean Christopher Jenkins. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, Sean Christopher Jenkins, SEAN, right? And that's where I'm streaming live from too, my LinkedIn and my Facebook. I'm streaming live also on my YouTube channel, which I try to do 2 times a week, right? But the goal is to do it every day. But right now I'm in seminary school and it's kicking my butt. And then also my wife's pregnant. I just got a lot of responsibilities right now, guys. I can't wait till I can go live 2 times a day. I'm gonna kill you guys with that, man. Just wait. But I'm on podcasts too. I'm on every podcast platform you can think of: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Apple music, even iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcast from. My podcast is Uplift Past Crossroads. Uplift Past Crossroads. All right, YouTube channel. That's where you see all my videos. I'm going to show you guys more about my YouTube channel. My X page, Twitter page, Snap, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. I'm streaming live on that Instagram page, Trouble Don't Last. I'm also streaming live on my other Instagram page, my_daily_Bible. And then my Tumblr page is Trouble Don't Last #1, right? And so on my YouTube channel, like I said, I work really hard. So like this is my 503rd video on YouTube. Woo! I don't know how to do hands raised on video yet, but yeah, 503rd video. Yeah, I said it right. So you can get way more videos from me on my YouTube channel, Uplift Past Crossroads. If you really enjoyed yourself, right? Also, if you enjoyed me talking about seminary school, my experience there, and just something my presentation I did for class, and you want way more stuff like that, me breaking down books and stuff, check out that playlist, Seminary School, on my YouTube channel, Uplift Past Crossroads. Also, another playlist is John chapter 9. I actually got a few videos on there. Anytime I did sermons, Bible studies, and then eventually future animations on John chapter 9, the man born blind. That's also another playlist on my YouTube channel. The man born blind, the parents of the man born blind. I think I might add Bartimaeus to that just to do it, just to make that playlist everything. But check out that playlist if you enjoy me breaking down that. I actually got Sunday school lessons and a Bible study on that. So, all right, guys. I don't know if I want to go live because I'm kind of tired of talking. I'm kind of tired. Like I got no energy. I may go live just tomorrow, but pray you guys enjoyed it, man. All right. You know what to do, man. Please support my pages. Let me know what you thought about this video. Leave a comment. If you watched all the way to the end, say I watched all the way to the end. And thank you for watching all the way to the end. You guys rock. And yeah, just go to my YouTube channel for more, guys. For real. Subscribe. And after you subscribe, click the bell. There's a bell that comes up as soon as you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then say to be notified all the time. So you're notified anytime I upload another video. Anytime I go live, I can go live whenever. Most of the time it's Fridays after 3 p.m. Central Time. Today it was 7 p.m. Central Time. So yeah, guys. All right. Talk to you guys later, man. I'm about to be with my wife and read for seminary school. I got a lot of homework assignments due. It's the end of the semester now. It's time to get serious. All right. Talk to you guys later. Peace out.
How's your day?